Margaret had been growing vegetables in her back garden in Shropshire for 31 years. Same soil, same beds, same hands in the same earth every morning before her husband woke up. Tomatoes along the south wall, brassicas down the middle, courgettes at the far end near the fence. 31 years of the same quiet routine. In the summer of 2019, she walked out one morning and stopped. Something had been through her cabbages overnight. Not one or two leaves, all of them, chewed down to the stem in a single night. She stood there in her dressing gown in the early light and didn't say anything for a long time. Just looked, because any gardener reading this right now knows exactly what that moment feels like. That specific silence, that specific weight in your chest, when something you've been growing and caring for and checking on every single day is just gone. She went to the garden center that afternoon and bought the spray they recommended. Used it exactly as instructed. The caterpillars came back 3 weeks later. She bought more spray, they came back again. By the end of that summer, she had spent £64 on products that didn't work, and her brassica bed had produced almost nothing. The following spring, her neighbor handed her a plain white bed over the fence. No bright label, no dramatic claims on the packaging. Just a bag of fine white powder that looked like it had no business solving anything. That summer, Margaret didn't lose a single plant. What her neighbor gave her has been sitting in the earth for 30 million years. It costs £5. And the reason Margaret had never heard of it in 31 years of gardening is one of the most straightforward and quietly maddening things I have ever looked into. Before there were lakes where Britain and North America now sit, those waters were full of microscopic creatures called diatoms. Tiny single-celled algae with shells made of silica, the same basic material as glass. When they died, their shells drifted to the bottom, layer after layer for millions of years, until the lakes dried and those shells became soft white rock compressed just beneath the surface of the earth. When you grind that rock into powder, you get diatomaceous earth. And what it does to an insect is unlike anything a chemical spray has ever managed. It doesn't poison anything. It doesn't need to be eaten or absorbed. It works entirely by touch. Those fossilized shells are razor sharp at a microscopic level. When an insect walks through diatomaceous earth, those edges cut through the waxy layer covering its exoskeleton. That waxy layer is what keeps moisture inside the insect's body. Without it, the insect dehydrates slowly, completely, with absolute certainty. There is no resistant strain. There is no next generation of aphids that evolves past dehydration. Chemicals stop working because insects adapt to chemistry. They cannot adapt to physics. Diatomaceous earth has been killing insects the same way since before humans existed, and it will still be doing it exactly the same way long after every chemical on the market today has been banned and replaced and banned again. Farmers understood this centuries before the science existed to explain it. Grain stores across Britain and Europe in the 1800s used this powder to protect wheat from weevils. Ships crossing the Atlantic lined their holds with it. It worked so reliably and so completely that there was almost no reason to look for anything else. And then in 1939, a Swiss chemist discovered DDT, and within a decade the entire agricultural world decided that chemistry was the future, and everything that had come before it was primitive. DDT killed insects so fast and so completely that the companies making it couldn't produce it fast enough. They sprayed it from airplanes over entire counties. Children ran through DDT clouds in the street in summer. It was considered progress, safe, powerful, modern progress. Rachel Carson spent years documenting what was actually happening. Bird populations collapsing across Britain and America, eagles nearly gone. Eggshells so thin from DDT contamination that the mother's own weight cracked them before they could hatch. A generation of wildlife quietly disappearing while the companies producing DDT paid scientists to question her data and call her work emotional rather than scientific. DDT was eventually banned, but the industry it had built was worth billions by then. The infrastructure, the supply chains, the relationships with farmers and garden centers and agricultural bodies across the country. None of that disappeared, it just found new chemicals. And the business model stayed exactly the same: a bottle you buy, a bottle you use up, a bottle you come back for every season, every year. For as long as you have a garden, that model only works if you keep needing them. And you can only keep needing them if nobody tells you about the 5-pound bag that outlasts every bottle they sell. Read the label on the spray in your shed right now. The full label: keep away from children, do not allow contact with skin, harmful to aquatic life, harmful to bees. Then remember that you spray that on your tomatoes on a Tuesday and slice them onto your plate on Thursday. That is not me being dramatic. That is what the label says. That is the product that was handed to Margaret at the garden center by someone who never once mentioned the alternative sitting 3 shelves away. The only precaution with diatomaceous earth is to avoid breathing a concentrated cloud of it directly. The same way you wouldn't put your face into a bag of flour and inhale. That is the entire safety conversation. You can handle it with bare hands. You can apply it in the morning and eat from the same plants that afternoon. There is no waiting period because there is nothing in it that your body needs protecting from. Bees need one small thought: apply it around the base of plants, along soil edges, on the undersides of leaves. Do it at dawn or dusk when bees are less active. 30 seconds of consideration and your bees are completely fine. Neonicotinoid pesticides, still sold openly in British garden centers under friendly brand names, contaminate pollen and nectar and travel back to the hive with the bee. Britain has lost 13 species of bees since 1900. The products that contributed to that are still on the shelf. Diatomaceous earth has never taken a single bee that a gardener was trying to protect. Nobody made a decision to hide this from you. There was no meeting, no conspiracy. What happened is much simpler than that and somehow worse. A 5-pound bag that lasts to full growing seasons doesn't build a business. A bottle that runs out in 6 weeks does. So the advertising went to the bottles. The shelf space went to the bottles. The recommendations at the garden center counter went to the bottles. And the plain bag of ancient white powder sat quietly where it has always sat, waiting for someone like Margaret's neighbor to finally hand it over the fence. Margaret told me that what bothers her most isn't the 64 pounds she spent that summer, it's the 30 years before it. 30 years of spraying things she didn't fully understand onto food she was growing for her family. 30 years during which this powder was always there, always available, always 5 pounds a bag. She just never knew to look for it. A 2-kilogram bag costs between 5 and 8 pounds. It covers a large garden multiple times. It doesn't expire. After rain, you reapply because rain temporarily stops it working, not because rain makes it dangerous. It starts working again the moment it dries. Go to your garden this weekend. Look at what's eating your plants. Look at the spray bottles in your shed and read the labels properly, maybe for the first time. Then order a bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth. Put it around your brassicas, along your bed edges, on the undersides of your worst affected leaves. Then think about Margaret, standing in her dressing gown in the early light, looking at what was left of her cabbages. And then think about the following summer, same garden, same beds. Same hands in the same earth every morning, not a single plant lost. 30 million years of engineering, 5 pounds. One bag handed over a fence by a neighbor who knew. The bugs never stood a chance, the gardeners just weren't told.